Build Show's on the road today, coming to you from Superior, Colorado. Boulder's over this way, Denver's over that way, and there was a fire that went through here just a little shy of 2 years ago called the Marshall Fires, which absolutely devastated this neighborhood. Over 1,000 homes burned literally all the way down to the foundation in about 6 hours. Homeowners got out with their lives. I don't believe any lives were lost in this subdivision, but literally over 1,000 houses lost like that. And check this out, here's some cars side of the job site that were part of the fire, and you can see the melted glass on the window. Holy cow, isn't that crazy? Seeing that melted folded glass, this is pretty nuts. Anyways, today's build show, we're gonna be checking out some fire rebuilds. We got lots of tips for fire resistant construction. We're also going to be checking out some passive house construction. Got a lot of good stuff. Today's build show, let's get going. Okay y'all, let's take a quick tour here. So what you're looking at here is double wide masonry, and these compressed earth blocks that you're seeing look like brick, but they're not actually a fired product. They're literally a compressed product. I'll show you one when we go on the inside. And so you've got masons that lay it up kind of like brick on the outside. They lay two courses, an inside course and an outside course. You know, we've been doing this around the world for at least a century now. You would typically see this in Mexico and Italy and all kinds of other foreign countries. And then this concrete layer is what they call a bond beam, which ties everything together and also gives you a place to put your floor system. And then because we're worried about fire here, we've got a closed soffit fascia system with an unvented attic. I mean, like I said, this looks a lot like this house could be built in Mexico or built somewhere else in the world. Let's go inside and let me show you one of the compressed blocks. And then you're gonna notice the inside construction looks a lot like typical American construction. Once you get inside, you've got, you know, normal framed walls, you've got I-joists in here, 2x4 interior framing, an LVL that's been bolted on into the bond beam so that we can run a floor system. And then they've got, I'm assuming these are some type of pressure treated bucks that the windows have been placed into so that you can actually you know, nail in a normal kind of flanged window on the outside. Now here's one of the compressed earth blocks. These are made locally here in Colorado. I don't know the exact dimension, but I'm thinking that's like a 10-inch by 4-inch maybe. And I was talking to Lisa, the owner of the company that makes these. These are made with local clay, local sand, and I want to say like 6 or 8% lime, so no Portland cement. And they put this into a compression machine, and it's actually compressing it to about 2,000 psi. So the finished block or brick, I guess whatever you want to call it here, is something like 1,200 psi. And then I mentioned earlier that it's double wide construction. So you've got this block here on the inside, you've got an outside block, and then in this hollow gap here, which is 3 inches, they're pouring perlite for a more natural insulation value. And the electricians are working with the masons to set their boxes and then set conduit. I'm not quite sure what the detail is, why this conduit's kind of sticking out at the top of the wall there, but anyways, that's the conduit that's gonna bring the wires into these boxes. Fascinating system, isn't it? Let's go in the back of the house here, and I'm going to show you a couple details that I thought were interesting too. For instance, here's your weeps at the bottom. I just used a real traditional masonry rope. So any water that gets in here is going to come down and weep out at that rope. Now the whole outside of the house is going to get 1.5 inches of stucco. So a pretty traditional stucco coat on the outside. There's a through wall flashing right here in the center, right above that bond beam. There's a stainless steel flashing that's about 1.5 inches sticking out. And that's going to be the screed that the masons will use, or pardon me, the stucco contractor will use. And then I also saw some different weeps when I was looking from the upstairs out, like some tubes that are weeping out there. So the idea being, if this wall takes on any moisture, that it's going to be able to weep out. But pretty fascinating building, isn't it? You don't see this in America very often. Big thanks to the homeowners, Mateo and Mel, for allowing me to film in the house. The homeowners actually are from, Mateo is from Italy originally, and said, when we build houses in Italy, we build them to last. We built them for total cost of ownership in mind. And Americans tend to build houses just thinking about that house as a stepping stone. He was really excited that this was a house that was going to be around for a while, that would be comfortable to live in, that would have some forgiveness built in, that, if these windows ever had a leak someday, it would leak into a masonry wall cavity and there'd be nothing to rot and mold in there. I really appreciated his thoughts on that. Also fascinating to see that it's really not that difficult of a leap, really. I mean, these outside walls are different, but the rest of the framing, the rest of the house, pretty typical, pretty normal. He also mentioned the Advantech flooring in particular was awesome because they got some heavy rains as the masons were working. They put that first floor deck in. Oh, look, you can see it. Some rain coming in right here on the Advantech. And that Advantech has had no problems. Had to use typical flooring, plywood or maybe typical OSB would have had some serious problems. But here you can see the framed opening here. I've got some Tapcon screws to put these in. It looks like they used some type of waterproofing here. Not quite sure what that is. And then they've got a sill pan. And then they're installing some Alpine windows like the neighbors were using as well. Traditional roof system here, just all trusses from BFS. This is pretty interesting though. It looks like an LVL top plate that's probably bolted down into, I'm assuming, some type of bond beam on the top there. Hurricane straps to hold each one of those down. And then this will be a closed soffit and is going to get a net and blow system, I'm assuming similar to what Chuck had on his house next door. And then you can see the whole upstairs is pretty darn traditional. Interesting to note, when I was walking the house earlier with the homeowner Mateo, he mentioned that the house next door is being built or rebuilt with not as much attention to wildfire, and he was worried about it. So he turned these windows into glass block windows so that there'd be no issues with fire on this side of the house if there was a problem here. And then also you can see here, if I pull this up, you can see the perlite in there. Lisa, the owner of the block company, was telling me that this house on the performance path is rated as an R17 wall assembly. And then I'm assuming this roof could be at least probably R50, R60, maybe even higher. Pretty awesome. Very impressive system. I like it. I mean, it's definitely different than what we would do traditionally in American homes. But what a cool system. I'm not entirely sure on cost on this house, but in talking to the homeowner, he was kind of giving me some general cost data. Said that the block system here was like $50,000 with a block. And then he did have some additional costs that he wasn't totally sure of the pricing, but he's got some steel lintels. That actually doesn't look like a steel lintel, but he's got some steel lintels on these headers. And then for aesthetics, he also put some cedar lintels in as well because they look pretty. But that was kind of a cool touch. And this is going to be the view from the office space. How cool is that? Pretty amazing to think about this view. And this is exactly the view of where the fires came in when that Marshall fire happened. So to build a house like this and be this solid, not have to think about that fire issue again, pretty impressive. I'll put a link to the block manufacturer down here. I'm curious what your comments are, guys. What do you think about this style of construction? Is this something you guys would consider, especially if you're in a fire-prone area like where these guys are building here in Colorado? Very different here for America, very different for Colorado, but pretty typical for other parts of the world. In fact, it was kind of funny. He said that the masons that built the walls said, "Gosh, you're building a house just like Mexico, where I'm from originally." What an honor to work on your house. I thought that was a really cool quote from the homeowner talking about some of the subs that worked on the house. But anyways, that being said, guys, thanks for taking a tour for me. What a cool project. If you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. We've got new content here every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on TikTok or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.